My name is James Mercer. I'm a soldier. Not special forces, not a movie hero, just a guy who spent enough nights in places that smell like diesel and fear to know the difference between something's out there and we're spooking ourselves. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I've got a wife, Erin, and a little girl, Lucy, who thinks my gym chalk is magic powder and tries to pat it on her cheeks when I'm not looking. I train a lot, not because I'm chasing a look, but because, in my line of work, you never know when your body is going to be the only tool you have left. This happened in spring, down in the Ozarks, which matters, because the thing I'm about to tell you about isn't a Pacific Northwest creature. The Northwest has its own problems. This was Ozark country, different air, different woods, different rules. And there's a name for what lives there. They call it the Ozark Howler. I'd heard the phrase before in a joking way, like don't go in the woods at night kind of talk. I'd also seen a stupid movie, one of those low-budget creature features you watch overseas when you're tired and homesick and someone found a hard drive full of questionable entertainment. It had a mangy thing with glowing eyes and a howl that sounded like a train screaming through a tunnel. We laughed at it. I didn't laugh later. I was on a leave, driving solo. Erin had asked me to be careful, and I'd promised I would because that's what you say when your wife looks at you like she's trying to memorize your face before you walk out the door. I was cutting through northern Arkansas, Ozark National Forest territory, taking a scenic route that wasn't scenic at all once the road narrowed and the trees leaned in like they were listening. The day was bright, sun bouncing off new leaves, that early spring green that looks almost fake, the kind of day that makes you feel like nothing bad is allowed to happen. I'd been on the road for hours, no music, just the tires and my thoughts. I was heading to meet my old army buddy, Reed, who'd moved down there after getting out. He'd invited me for a couple days, fish, hike, drink cheap beer, be normal men for 48 hours. Then my truck started doing that thing vehicles do when they're about to betray you. A tiny shudder you can feel more in the steering wheel than you can hear. At first, I thought it was the road. Then the temperature gauge climbed like it was late for work. I pulled over onto a gravel turnout. The engine ticked and hissed. The hood radiated heat, and when I popped it, the smell hit me. Coolant, metal, that sharp sweet sting that says you're not driving anywhere for a while. Radiator hose, cracked, not a full burst but enough to bleed my chances dry. Cell signal, 1 bar, then none. I did what you do. I cursed. I called Erin anyway, hoping it would connect. It didn't. I checked my supplies. Basic kit, water, a couple protein bars, a first aid pouch I never traveled without, a small tool roll, a pistol I'm licensed for and trained with, kept it locked and stored properly, but I had it. I had no desire to use it. People think armed means fearless. It doesn't. It just means if something goes wrong, you'll live long enough to feel guilty about it. I got the hose off, looked at it like it might apologize. No luck. I could have tried a temporary fix with tape and prayer, but I'm not the kind of man who trusts a prayer to hold coolant pressure. That's when I heard it. Not the howl, not yet. Just A sound that didn't belong in a bright spring afternoon. A dragging noise far off in the trees, like something heavy moving over leaves. I stood still and listened. Nothing. Wind moved through branches. Somewhere a bird chattered. Normal. I told myself it was a deer rubbing on bark, a fallen limb shifting, my imagination. Then I smelled something faint and ugly, like damp fur and rot, with a little sulfur bite under it, the kind of smell that makes the back of your throat tighten. I've been around that. I know what decay smells like. This wasn't that. This was something that smelled alive and wrong. I shut the hood slowly, without slamming it. I don't know why. Some instincts come from the oldest part of the brain. Don't announce yourself. I scanned the tree line. That's when I saw the first sign that I wasn't alone. A set of prints in the soft mud along the edge of the turnout. At first glance, I thought bear, big, heavy, but the shape was off. Longer, toes more defined, claws, yes, but not like a bear's soft rounded impressions. These were sharper, like a dog's, only massive. I squatted down, close enough to see the detail, and I saw something I still can't neatly explain. The print looked like it had the front of something canine and the weight of something heavier, like it had pressed deeper than a wolf should. It wasn't a clean match for anything I knew. I stood, brushed my hands on my jeans, and in that moment my mind flashed back to that stupid movie. The cheap CGI, the glowing eyes, the howl. I almost laughed. Almost. Then the woods answered me with a sound like a cough, deep, wet, and irritated, and I felt very clearly the sensation of being watched. I wasn't going to sit there until dark, so I did what every rational person does in the middle of nowhere. I started walking. There was a bend in the road behind me, and beyond it, the asphalt dipped and vanished between ridges. The forest on either side was thick but not jungle thick. You could see into it a little way, enough to feel like you should be able to see anything big. That's the trick. You can't. After maybe 15 minutes, I heard a vehicle coming and stepped to the shoulder, raising my hand. A white pickup rolled up, dust swirling around its tires. The driver slowed and leaned out. He was a local, sun-browned, older than me by a couple decades, with a beard that looked like it had never met a razor. His eyes were pale and sharp. "You broke down?" he asked, like this was the most common thing in the world. "Radiator hose," I said. He nodded once, as if my truck had insulted him personally. "You're a ways from anywhere." "Got any signal out here?" I asked. He snorted. "You can get signal if you climb a tree and hold your phone up like you're offering it to God." I didn't smile. I don't know if he noticed. He looked past me down the road toward my truck. Then he looked at the tree line. Not casually, not like someone admiring nature, like someone checking corners. "What's your name?" he asked. "James." "James what?" "Mercer." His eyes flicked to my posture, my hair, the way I carried myself. People clock military sometimes without you saying a word. He nodded again, slower. "Name's Clint," he said. "Hop in. I got tools. Might be able to patch you up enough to limp to my place. I ain't a mechanic, but I've kept worse alive." I hesitated. Not because he gave me a bad vibe. He didn't. He gave me a real vibe, which is rarer. But the woods had gotten quiet again. No birds, no chatter, just the wind. I looked back once more at the tree line and saw something move. Just a shift, a ripple of shadow behind the trunk. Clint saw my head turn. "You see it?" he asked softly. I didn't want to say yes. Saying yes makes it real. "I saw something move," I said. Clint's jaw tightened. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed. "Get in the truck," he said, and there was no joking in his voice now. "We'll deal with your hose quick and get you out of this spot." I got in. As we drove back, Clint kept glancing into his mirrors like he expected something to be behind us. He didn't ask me where I was headed until we were almost to my truck. "Got family?" he asked suddenly. "Yeah," I said. "Wife, kid." "Then you got reason not to be stubborn," he replied. When he pulled up to my truck, the air felt different, cooler, damp in a way it hadn't been 15 minutes before. Clint got out and walked around my vehicle like he was inspecting a crime scene. He stopped at the prints. His eyes narrowed. "Damn it," he muttered. "You know what those are?" I asked. He straightened slowly. "I know what they ain't." That was his whole answer. Clint popped my hood, dug into his toolbox and made a face. "We can wrap it. Hose tape, clamps. Might hold long enough," he said. "But I don't like you being out here when the sun starts dropping." "Why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Clint paused. "Because around here," he said, "some things ain't scared of men. They just don't want to deal with them until it's convenient." He looked at me, and his eyes weren't joking anymore. "And this time of year," he added, "they get hungry." We worked fast. Clint's hands moved with the confidence of a man who's fixed engines on the side of roads his whole life. I helped where I could, holding, tightening, following his instructions. And while we worked, I kept noticing small things. A smear on a tree trunk at the edge of the turnout, dark like dried mud, but it had hairs in it. Scratches on the bark, too high to be from a bobcat. A faint smell that came and went in pulses, like something was circling just outside the wind's reach. Clint finished wrapping the hose, slapped the hood shut, and nodded. "Now," he said, "start it." I did. The engine coughed, caught, idled rough but steady. The temperature needle stayed low, for now. Clint didn't look satisfied. He looked like a man who'd patched a hole in a boat while still hearing something bumping the hull. "Follow me," he said. "Don't stop for nothing. If you see something, you keep driving." "Like what?" I asked. Clint stared at me for a long second. Then he said, "You ever hear a sound that makes your bones wanna hide inside your body?" I didn't answer. Clint climbed back into his truck. I got in mine, checked mirrors, checked the road, and followed him. We hadn't gone a mile when the first howl hit. It came from the woods to the left, sweeping across the road like a physical force. It wasn't a wolf howl. I've heard wolves. This wasn't that. This was deeper, longer, warped. It started low like a bear's groan and then climbed into something almost human, like a scream, but distorted, as if it came through a throat built for something else. The sound filled the cab and made the hairs on my arms stand up. Clint's truck brake lights flickered for a second, like even he flinched. Then he accelerated. I followed, heart banging like it wanted out. The howl ended, but the echo didn't. It seemed to cling to the trees, vibrating through them. I glanced at my rearview mirror, and for a heartbeat I thought I saw something in the road behind me. Tall, broad, moving on all fours with a rolling gait. But it was gone before my brain could fully process it. I did not stop. I drove until the road widened a little, and Clint turned down a dirt lane lined with fencing. His property wasn't fancy. An old farmhouse, a couple outbuildings, rusted equipment, the kind of place that looks like it's been standing through every kind of weather and every kind of hardship without caring. Clint waved me into a spot near his barn. "Kill your engine," he said, already out of his truck, "and keep your eyes open." I did as told. The silence that followed was even worse than the howl, because now I knew what the silence meant. The forest was listening. Clint walked me toward the house. Before we got there, I saw something on the edge of his pasture, an old sign nailed to a post, hand-painted letters faded by years. "Don't go into the woods after dark." It wasn't a joke sign. It didn't have a rustic charm. It had the bluntness of someone who wrote it because they ran out of softer ways to say it. I looked at Clint. "How often do you have to tell people that?" He didn't answer. He just opened his front door and gestured me inside, like he'd decided I was safer under his roof than out under the sky. Inside smelled like coffee and gun oil. A few old family photos on the wall, a worn couch, a table covered in mail and tools. Normal. Except for the shotgun leaning in the corner by the door, like it belonged there as much as the coat rack. Clint noticed me looking. "Everybody's got snakes," he said, casual. "Some of us got other things." He poured coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to me. "You said you're headed to see somebody," he said. "Reed," I replied. "Buddy from the army. Lives near here." Clint's eyes narrowed. "Reed who?" "Reed Halverson." That name made Clint go still. Then he took a slow breath and said, "Well, that explains why you are in this part of the world without knowing what not to do." "You know him?" I asked. Clint nodded once. "I've seen him in town. He's got that look, like he's always measuring exits." I stared into my coffee. "Yeah, that's him." Clint leaned his elbows on the table. "Listen, James," he said. "I'm gonna tell you something, and you're gonna either call me crazy, or you're gonna do exactly what I say." I didn't speak. Clint continued. "That howl you heard, that wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a bear, and it wasn't a prank." He pointed a finger toward the window, toward the woods, beyond his pasture. "There's a thing out there folks call the howler," he said. "Old stories say it's half wolf, half bear, sometimes like a big cat in the face. Some say it's got red eyes. Some say it smells like brimstone. Some say it screams like a woman when it's close." My stomach tightened. "And what do you say?" Clint's eyes met mine. "I say it's real." I wanted to argue. I wanted to take the soldier route, the rational route. But my skin still felt like it had been brushed by that sound. "So what now?" I asked. Clint stood. "Now, you call your buddy and tell him you're staying here tonight." "I can't," I said. "No signal." Clint nodded. as if he expected that. Then you stay here anyway. I pictured Erin, Lucy, the promise I'd made. Fine, I said, I'll stay. Clint watched me for a long moment, then gave me a short nod like I'd passed the test. Good, he said, because if you try to drive out in the dark with that patch job, you'll end up on the shoulder again, and if you end up on the shoulder again... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The sun went down slower than I wanted. Spring dusk in the Ozarks isn't like back home. The light drains out of the forest first. The sky can still be blue and the woods already feel like midnight. Clint fed me dinner. Beans, cornbread, some smoked meat that tasted like it had been made by a man who believes hunger is a solvable problem. We ate at the table, and he told me about his land, his family, the way his region used to be all small farms and hard people. He didn't talk about the howler again until we heard the sound outside. A thump against the barn. Not loud, just deliberate. Clint's eyes snapped to the window. His hand moved toward the shotgun by the door, like he wasn't even thinking about it. Stay seated, he said quietly. Another thump. Then a scraping sound like claws on wood. Clint walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to peer out. His face tightened. What is it? I asked. Clint didn't answer right away. Then he said, It's checking. Checking what? I asked. Checking if I'm home. Checking if I'm alone. Checking if I'm dumb. A third thump, closer, like something had moved along the side of the house. Clint's voice dropped even lower. Rule 1, he murmured. You don't go outside when it wants you to. I swallowed. Is it normal for it to come this close? Clint's eyes didn't leave the dark outside. Not normal, he said. But spring makes it bold. Why? I asked. Clint looked at me then, and I saw something in his expression I didn't like. Because sometimes, he said, it's got young. The thought hit me like cold water. Predators with young aren't just hungry. They're territorial. They're vicious. The scraping stopped. Silence again. Then, from somewhere beyond the pasture, a howl rose up. Not the long sweeping one from earlier, but shorter, sharper, like a warning. Clint let the curtain fall back. Now, he said, we do what we always do. He walked to a cabinet, opened it, and pulled out something that looked like a road flare. You have flares? I asked. Clint snorted. You live out here long enough, you stop thinking of them as car tools. He handed it to me. Rule 2, he said. Fire makes it hesitate. Doesn't stop it, but it hesitates. He set the shotgun on the table and began loading it with calm, practiced movements. I watched his hands. Rule 3, he said. You don't shoot unless it's in the yard. Why not shoot it in the woods? I asked. Clint's eyes flicked up. Because you don't want to wound it and give it a reason to come to you angry. He snapped the shotgun shut. Rule 4, he added. If you see it, you don't stare, you don't challenge, you don't act like a hero. I almost laughed because that's exactly the advice you give a man who thinks he can muscle his way through life. Rule 5, Clint said, softer now. You don't run into the trees. He said that like he'd seen someone do it, like he'd seen how it ends. The night pressed in. Clint and I sat at the table, two armed men in a small house, listening to the dark. Nothing attacked, not yet. But sleep wasn't an option. Around midnight, Clint got up and checked the locks again, even though they were already locked. He checked windows, he checked the shotgun, he checked the flares. I sat there and realized something. This wasn't fear, this was routine. Whatever lived out there, Clint had been living with it for a long time. At some point, the wind shifted, and that sulfur fur smell rolled over the house again, stronger now, like something had walked along the porch. Clint went still. Then came a sound that made my stomach drop. A chuff, like a bear, followed by a low, rumbling growl. Then, so quiet it barely existed, a sound like nails dragging across the door. My hand tightened around the flare. Clint whispered, "Don't move." The scratching stopped. A pause. Then a sound like someone exhaling through teeth. A hiss, but not snake-like. Bigger, wet. And then it happened. A scream, sudden and sharp, like a woman crying out in pain. Except it stretched wrong, too long, too deep at the end, like a voice pulled through a throat that couldn't quite shape the sound. I felt my whole body tense, as if bracing for impact. Clint's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. The scream ended abruptly. Silence again. Then from farther away, another howl answered, and then another. Not one creature, more than one. Clint looked at me for the first time in minutes. His face had gone pale beneath the weathered skin. "Rule 6, he said, voice tight. "If you hear more than one, you keep the lights on till morning." Morning came like mercy. Sunlight spilled into the kitchen, and for a brief moment I felt ridiculous, like I'd spent the night spooking myself. Then Clint opened the front door, and we stepped outside, and the yard told the truth. There were prints everywhere. Big, deep impressions in the dirt near the porch, in the soft ground by the barn, along the fence line. And there were scratches on the barn door, long gouges, higher than my shoulder. Clint walked to one of the prints and crouched. He touched the ground, then snipped his fingers. "Sulfur," he muttered. I stared at the print. The shape was wrong in the same way as before. Canine front, too heavy, too large. Clint stood, his eyes scanning the tree line. "It came right up to the house," I said. Clint nodded. "It did." "Why didn't it come in?" I asked. Clint's mouth tightened. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he didn't need to. He walked toward the fence, and I followed. That's when I saw what was hanging there. A dead raccoon, torn open and draped over the fence wire like a warning. My stomach twisted. Clint stared at it for a long time, then looked at me. "That?" he said quietly. "Is it leaving you a message?" I swallowed. "What message?" Clint's eyes were hard. "It knows you're here." The day stayed sunny, but the warmth didn't comfort me anymore. It felt like the woods were wearing a friendly mask. Clint tried calling around town to see if someone could bring a proper hose, but his landline crackled and died mid-call. He cursed under his breath. "Storm last week knocked things around," he said, though the sky was clear. I offered to drive into town with my patched hose while it was daylight. Clint didn't like it, but he didn't see another option. "Reed lives about 40 minutes from here," he said. "If you get that far, you're good. But you don't stop. If your temp gauge climbs, you keep moving till you reach a driveway or a building." "I hear you," I said. Clint looked like he wanted to say more. Finally he said, "If you see it, don't aim at the eyes." "What?" I asked. Clint's gaze was flat. "Just don't." That should have been my hint that the stories weren't just stories. I got in my truck and started it. The engine ran rough but steady. I watched the gauge like it was a heartbeat monitor. Clint stood in his driveway with the shotgun resting in the crook of his arm until I pulled away. I drove down the dirt lane back to the main road. The forest closing in on both sides. Bright sun, long shadows. The world looked normal. And then, about 10 minutes in, I saw something at the edge of the road. A deer. Except it wasn't standing. It was on its side in the ditch. And as I passed, I saw its throat had been torn open in a way that was too savage for any normal predator kill. The flesh was ragged, and the stomach had been ripped as if something had eaten in a hurry and left in disgust. Flies were already on it. I kept driving. My phone buzzed once, one bar of service, teasing me, and then it died again. I rounded a curve and hit a stretch of road that ran along a ridge. Trees on both sides, drop off beyond the shoulder. No guardrails. That's when I heard it again. Not the long howl, a bark, deep, explosive. Then another. My hands tightened on the wheel. The temperature gauge twitched upward. I cursed and whispered Erin's name like it was a charm. Then something moved in my peripheral vision, fast, low, on the right side, matching my speed. I glanced, and for half a second I saw it between the trees. A shape running parallel to me, weaving between trunks with a speed that didn't make sense for something that big. It was low to the ground, shoulders rolling, head forward. And when it hit a patch of sunlight, I saw more detail than I ever wanted. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, but not cleanly. The chest was thick, muscular. The head was canine, but broader, with a muzzle that looked almost cat-like at the end. Its fur was dark and matted in places, and the way it moved, God, the way it moved, wasn't like a normal animal. It moved like it knew exactly what I was and exactly what it could do. Then it surged ahead, not in the woods, onto the road. It burst out from the right, hitting the asphalt in front of me with a slap of heavy paws and claws that actually clicked on pavement. I hit the brakes by instinct and immediately regretted it because the truck swayed. The patched hose groaned under pressure, and the gauge spiked. The creature turned its head toward me, and I saw its eyes. Not glowing like in the movie, not supernatural, but a harsh, reflective red-brown, like the way an animal's eyes catch light in the dark. Only it was daylight, and they still looked wrong. It opened its mouth, and it screamed. Not a howl, not a bark, a scream, like a woman, like pain, like a human voice dragged through a predator's throat. My heart slammed against my ribs. The creature didn't charge the hood. It didn't leap at the windshield. It just stared and screamed like it was pinning me in place with sound. Then it lunged, not at me but at the front bumper, claws raking metal with a sound that made my teeth ache. The truck rocked. I didn't think, I reacted. I yanked the wheel left and hit the gas, forcing the truck forward. The bumper scraped. The creature was shoved aside, rolling into the shoulder. I kept going. In the mirror, I saw it stand up on all fours again, as if nothing happened. Then it ran after me. Not fast enough to catch the truck, but fast enough to tell me it could if it wanted. I drove like my life depended on it, because it did. The gauge climbed, the engine protested. Steam began to curl from under the hood. I saw a sign, Ranger Station, 2 miles. I've never loved a sign more in my life. I kept my foot down. Behind me, the howling started. Multiple voices now, overlapping, echoing through the trees. 2 miles felt like 20. When the ranger station finally appeared, small building, gravel lot, flagpole, I swung in so hard my tires threw rocks. I killed the engine and jumped out. A man stepped out of the building, hand on his belt where his sidearm sat. He looked like a ranger, green uniform, stern face, eyes that already knew something was wrong because of the way I arrived. "You alright?" he called. I opened my mouth and nothing came out at first. Then the howls rose again from the woods behind the station. The ranger's expression changed instantly. Not surprise, recognition. He turned toward the woods and his hand moved from casual to ready. "Inside," he said, voice clipped. I ran up the steps and into the station. The ranger following and locking the door behind us like it was a reflex. The building smelled like paper, coffee, and old wood. A radio crackled on a desk. The ranger looked at me hard. "Name?" "James Mercer," I said. "My truck broke down. Something chased me." The howls rose again, closer now, circling. The ranger's face tightened. "You saw it?" I swallowed. "Yeah." He exhaled through his nose like he'd been hoping I'd say no. "You got a weapon?" he asked. I nodded and carefully drew my pistol, keeping it low. The ranger nodded approval. "Good, but don't shoot unless I tell you." "What is it?" I demanded. The ranger hesitated just a fraction of a second. Then he said, "Folks call it the Howler." My stomach dropped because Clint had been right. The ranger moved to a cabinet and pulled out a shotgun of his own. He checked it, loaded it, and grabbed a box of shells. "Why is it here?" I asked. The ranger's eyes were hard. "Because you drove through its area, and because Springs got them bold, and because," he paused, then said it anyway, "because somebody's been feeding it." "What?" I snapped. The ranger's jaw clenched. "We've had reports. People leaving carcasses out, trying to lure it for pictures, trying to prove stories. Some idiot thought it'd be like baiting a bear." I felt anger flush through me so hot it made my hands shake. So now it's hunting people. The ranger didn't deny it. Outside something hit the side of the building. Not a gentle bump, a slam. The whole station shuddered. The ranger raised the shotgun, eyes locked on the windows. And then came the sound that chilled me more than anything else. A soft scratching at the back door. Not frantic, patient. Like it knew the door was there and it had all day. The ranger looked at me. "You got family?" he asked suddenly. "Yeah," I said, thinking of Erin and Lucy like a lifeline. "Then you listen," he said, voice low and deadly serious. "This thing wants you to panic, wants you to run, wants you to make noise. You do none of that." Another slam, this time on the side window. The glass held, but the frame creaked. The ranger muttered a curse. "You got a flare?" he asked. I remembered Clint's rules. I nodded and pulled it from my bag. The ranger's eyes flicked to it and something like relief crossed his face. "Good," he said. "If it breaches, you light that. Fire buys seconds." Seconds, not safety. The howls rose again. 2, 3 voices overlapping. The station felt suddenly too small. The ranger grabbed his radio, keyed in and spoke fast. "Station 6 to county. I need units, I need..." The radio hissed static, swallowing his words. He hit it again, more static. He slammed the radio down hard enough to rattle the desk. The scratching stopped outside. Silence. Then, from right against the wall, a low, rumbling growl like a motor idling. The ranger's eyes widened slightly. "It's close," he whispered. And then the back door handle moved. Not yanked, turned, slowly. I stared at it, my brain refusing to accept what I was seeing. Animals don't do that. The ranger's face went pale. The handle turned again. The wood creaked. I heard the faintest sound like breathing, deep and wet. The ranger mouthed, "Now," and pointed at the flare. My hands fumbled, adrenaline making my fingers stupid. The handle turned harder. The door shuddered. I struck the flare. It ignited with a violent hiss and bright light, flooding the small room with harsh red. Outside, the growl changed, shifted into a sound of irritation, like the flare offended it. The door hit again, but weaker, like it hesitated. The ranger raised the shotgun and shouted, "Back off." The howl that answered was so loud it made my ears ring. Then the station shook as something slammed into the side wall again, and I heard glass crack. The ranger swore. "Window," he yelled. I turned just as the side window bowed inward. A clawed paw, massive, black, furred, punched through, splintering wood. Glass shattered. The paw withdrew, then struck again, widening the gap. I saw fur, saw muscle, saw the edge of a muzzle. The ranger fired. The blast was deafening inside the station. Pellets hit the frame, and something outside screamed. Not the woman's scream this time, but a raw, animal roar of pain. The paw withdrew. The howls outside went wild, angry. The ranger shouted again into the radio, beating it like that could force it to work. More static. And then, like a cruel joke, my phone buzzed. 1 bar of signal. An incoming call. Erin. I froze. The ranger snapped his head toward me. His eyes were furious. "Do not answer," he hissed. My whole body begged to pick up, to hear her voice, to tell her I was okay. But I looked at the broken window, the claw marks, the splinters, the blood, dark spots on the frame, and I understood what the ranger meant. Noise, distraction, panic. I silenced the call with my thumb, tears stinging my eyes from stress and smoke and the flare's harsh heat. Outside, the howler screamed again, long and human-like, furious now. The ranger leaned toward me. "When this stops," he whispered, "you're coming with me to the vehicles. We're leaving." "Leaving where?" I asked, voice shaking. "Somewhere he doesn't want to follow," he said. The flare burned down, hissing and spitting. The howls outside slowly shifted from rage to distance. Not gone, just backing off, like Clint said, hesitating. We waited until the flare died. The ranger kept the shotgun up the entire time, eyes flicking between the broken window and the doors. I held my pistol in a two-handed grip, trying to keep my breathing quiet, trying to keep my mind from sprinting ahead into worst-case scenarios. Minutes crawled. Finally, the ranger nodded once. "Now," he said. We moved to a side door that led to the lot. He creaked it just enough to peek out. Sunlight still bright, but it felt dimmer than it should, like the forest had stolen some of it. The ranger swung the door open. "Move," he ordered. We ran to a government SUV parked near the building. He tossed me the keys. "Drive," he said. I hesitated. "You drive," he replied, and I obeyed. We peeled out of the lot, gravel spraying. As we hit the main road, I glanced in the mirror, and there it was. Not in the road, not charging, just at the edge of the trees, half hidden behind the trunk, watching. I caught a glimpse of its head and shoulder, the bulk of it, the dark fur, the wrongness of its posture. And then it opened its mouth and made a sound so low it didn't carry like a howl. It sounded like satisfaction. We didn't stop driving until we reached a small town with actual people and actual buildings and the comforting stupidity of normal life. The ranger took me to a local mechanic. They replaced the hose. They looked at my truck bumper and asked what I had. I said deer, because what else do you say? The ranger made a call. He got through this time. He spoke quietly in the corner, using words like incident, injury, multiple vocalizations, probable, like it was a weather forecast. He came back and told me something I haven't stopped thinking about since. "We'll patrol," he said. "We'll warn people. We'll do what we can." "And kill it?" I asked. The ranger stared at me. "If it's one," he said, "maybe." My stomach sank. "What do you mean, if?" He didn't answer, he just looked out toward the distant line of trees beyond the town, like he could still hear the echo of those howls. Before I left, I finally called Erin. She answered on the first ring, voice tight with fear. "James, where are you?" I got a weird feeling. "I'm okay," I lied because it was easier than the truth. "Truck trouble, bad service." She exhaled, and I could hear Lucy in the background asking for me. "Come home," Erin said, and her voice cracked on the words. "Please." "I will," I promised. I drove straight to Reed's place after that because I needed someone who would believe me without laughing. Reed listened in silence as I told him everything. The prints, the smell, the scream, the door handle turning. When I finished, Reed didn't make a joke. He didn't call me crazy. He just got up, went to a cabinet, and pulled out a worn notebook. He opened it and slid it across the table. Inside were notes, dates, locations, sketches of tracks, references to livestock kills, and a hand-drawn map with circles around certain parts of the forest. Reed tapped one of the circles with his finger. That's where you broke down, he said quietly. I stared at him. You knew? Reed's jaw tightened. I knew stories, he said. I didn't know it was like that. What is it? I asked again. Reed's eyes met mine. Something that's been here longer than we have, he said. Something people learned to leave alone. I swallowed hard. Why did it come for me? Reed hesitated, then said, maybe because you were alone. Maybe because you were allowed in the wrong place. Maybe because... He stopped, like he didn't want to say the next part. Because what? I demanded. Reed's voice dropped. Because sometimes they test, they learn. I felt cold all over. I left the Ozarks the next morning. I didn't hike, I didn't fish, I didn't drink cheap beer. I drove out of that region like I was escaping a burning building. On the highway, miles away, with actual signal again, I searched Ozark Howler and got the usual mix of folklore, jokes, tourist articles. I found mention of its scream, its red eyes, its sulfur smell, its track patterns. I found people laughing. I closed the phone and stared at the road. Here's why I'm writing this down. A week after I got home, Lucy woke up screaming in the night. Erin ran to her room and I followed. Lucy was crying, eyes wide, pointing toward the window. What is it, baby? Erin asked. Lucy's voice shook as she said, It's outside, it's yelling. Erin looked at me like, please tell me this is nothing. I went to the window. Outside was our backyard. Normal, quiet, a street light, no movement. Then I heard it. Not a full howl, not even loud. Just a faint, distant sound like a woman's scream stretched too long, carried on a wind that shouldn't have reached Ohio. My blood went cold. Erin didn't hear it. Lucy did. I did. And in that moment I understood something Clint and the ranger and Reed all seemed to carry in their eyes. Some things don't just exist in a place. They exist in the attention you give them. So if you read this and you're thinking about going out into the Ozarks to hunt a legend, or film a story, or prove something, don't. Stay on the road, keep your engine healthy. Don't pull over where the woods feel too quiet. And if you ever hear a sound that makes your bones want to hide inside your body, don't go looking for the source, because the Ozark Howler doesn't need you to find it. It already knows exactly where you are.